Hi guys, this is Katina Samsel. I'm going to be talking about Chapter 7 today. Chapter 7 is centered between around 2 to 6 year olds. We're going to talk about physical changes in early childhood, health and wellness in early childhood, Piaget's pre-operational stage of cognitive development, other cognitive changes in early childhood, language changes in languages, and individual differences in intelligence. Growth and motor development in early childhood and the brain and the nervous system. Gross motor skills are movements that use and develop large muscles. Fine motor skills are movements that develop the small muscles of the hand. So in these two, we have different age ranges and gross motor skills and fine motor skills that are with those ages. Then we have a picture of a brain, and we have on the left side, we have language, logic, analysis, and math. On the right side, intuition, creativity, art, music, and spatial perception. These are each side of the brain produces, has different functions that it carries out. Young children's healthcare needs. So with this, we have checkups with primary physician, immunizations, physicals, and growth charts. Children in this age group should be allowed 8 to 10 hours of sleep. They should be eating well-balanced meals with less sugar. Illness and accidents, 6 to 7 colds per year, and that is in an average healthy child. And abuse and neglect is another thing that comes in during this time. With the food, they wanted to point out that at this age, it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality. We want to make sure that children are eating healthy. If they don't eat their full meal, that's okay. During this age, they're having some growth spats to where some children eat more, some children eat less. Stress can cause children to get more illnesses throughout the year. And child abuse. Child abuse is defined as physical or psychological injury that result in adults' intentional exposure of a child to potentially harm. Physical stimuli, sexual acts, or neglect. And neglect is a failure of caregivers to provide emotional and physical support for a child. Most cases of abuse and neglect result in serious injury or death, involve children under 4. And see, to prevent abuse, it all starts with education, identifying the steps with that. Piaget's pre-operational stage of cognitive development. We have construction play, first pretend play, substitute pretend play, social dramatic play, and rule governed play. Constructed play. So by the age of 2 or so, children use objects to build or construct things. With first pretend play, they are usually simple, like pretending to drink from a toy cup, usually tea parties around this age. Between 15 and 21 months. Between 2 and 3 years old, children start using substitute pretend play. Other objects represent something else. Their hand can represent a phone, such as that. Social dramatic play. Children engage in mutual pretense. So they'll play doctor and they have somebody who fills the role of such roles, doctor, nurse, patient, such as that. Rule governed play. By 5 or 6, children prefer rule governed play. They have rules. Whoever is the youngest goes first, such as that. Then we have Piaget view of early childhood thinking. We have speech adaptation, perspective talking ability, understanding of emotions, and distinguishing between appearance and reality. So speech adaptation would be they would have ability to understand that another person sees or experiences things differently than they do. Perception talking ability is that child knows that people experience things differently, and at level 2 the child develops a whole sense of complex rules for figuring out why precisely what the person sees or experiences. Understanding of emotion, children learn to regulate and modulate their expressions of emotions to conform to others' expectations, distinguishing between appearance and reality. They move away from egocentrism and have a broader understanding of appearance and reality. Theory of mind. Um, theory of mind evidence has led to a number of theorists who propose that 4 or 5 year olds has developed a new and quite sophisticated theory of mind or set of ideas that explain other people's beliefs, desires, and behaviors. The different phases are understanding thoughts, desires, and belief, the false belief principle, reciprocal nature of thought, and deriving knowledge through inference. A rate at which an individual preschooler develops a theory of mind is a good predictor of her social skills both later in early childhood and during school years. Changes in language, the grammar explosion. The grammar explosion is a period during when grammatical features of a children's speech become more similar to those of adult speech. We also have fast mapping. When children go to school, or at 2.5 years old, a child's vocabulary is about 600 words. When they go to school, about 5 or 6 years old, their total vocabulary has risen to perhaps 15,000 words, which is about 10 words increasing a day. Fast mapping is the term that psychologists use to refer to the ability to categorically link new words to real world objects or events. Individual differences in intelligence. We have measuring intelligence tests. Measuring intelligence, modern intelligence tests, stability and predictive value of IQ scores, origin and individual differences in intelligence, evidence for preschool influences on intelligence. With modern intelligence tests, they were developed by David Wechsler. I'm probably saying that right. Scores of these tasks are organized into indexes, composite scores of 2 or more subtests. Stability and predictive value of IQ scores. Children with high IQ scores will be among the higher achievers in school, and those who have lower will be among the lower achievers. They include motivation, interest, and persistence. IQ scores are also quite stable. A few months or a few years apart, the scores are likely to be very similar. Limitations of IQ tests. Traditional IQ tests do not measure a whole host of skills that are likely to be highly significant for getting along in the world. They were designed to measure only specific range of skills that are needed for success in school. They do not indicate anything about particular interests, a person's particular creativity, insight, street smarts, ability to read social cues, or understand spatial relationships. Environment as well as hereditary contributes to individual differences in intelligence. Group differences in intelligence test scores. We have the environmental explanation. IQ is highly heritable, and many developmentalists point out that difference in between average African American and white IQ scores fall well within the presumed reaction range of IQ. They emphasize that environment in which African American and white children are typically reared differ significantly to account for the average difference in scores. The Flynn effect. During the 19th-20th century, average IQ scores increased in every racial group throughout the industrialized world. That would be like in Asia. Asian societies place little or no value on inborn talent. Instead, they believe hard work can modify whatever talents a person was born with. They just do not simply accept academic failure as a sign of intellectual defect, but they are encouraged by adults to keep trying. Ability-based explanations. U.S. schools emphasize ability through routine use of IQ tests to place students in high, average, or low ability classes. Greater acceptance of the idea that people are limited by the amount of ability they possess, and that it is unfair to ask them to do more tests than they suggest they are capable of. And then here is just the summary of the chapter. Thank you guys for listening.